We are all living in a very crazy, upside down world today, and I'm sure some of you are wondering, is life really worth it? Why am I born at this time? Why couldn't I be born maybe somewhere in the past, like in biblical times or in the Middle Ages, or maybe somewhere in the 50s? Why am I born in this particular country within this specific ethnic group? Where do I fit into the bigger picture? In this video, I hope to help you find the answers to some of these questions. Hello there, my name is Japie Miller from Stories of Hope, where we hope to amplify your faith by sharing our personal testimonies as well as other people's stories through video with you. If you are new here, please subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon so that you can be notified when a new video becomes available. You'll also find some additional links in the description box below. If you find this video to be inspiration to you, be so kind to just leave us a comment in the comment box below, and we will be too happy to answer all of your questions. So you would like to know where you fit in this crazy world we are living in today. The best way for me to try and explain this to you is actually by telling you two short stories that happened way back in the past. And this is the story of Joseph and Jacob and how the two characters relate to each other. And most important, how the story to relate actually to us as individuals and where you are today. Joseph grew up in a large family. His father had 4 wives, each of which had several children. In total, there was 11 sons and 1 daughter. But Father Jacob loved Joseph's mother, Rachel, actually much more than the others. And he gave her sons Joseph and Benjamin a very special treatment. For example, he gave Joseph this very special, colorful robe. The 10 brothers became actually very jealous of Joseph, and this was only made worse when he had special dreams in which he saw all of his brothers bow down to him. Now I want you to close your eyes just for a moment while I'm telling you the story and imagine you are Joseph. Let's just imagine for a moment that you don't know the story and you don't know actually the outcome of the story in the end. Your father sent you to your brothers where they watch over the flock of sheep in a field. You know your brothers don't really like you, and because you are favored by your father and because of the dreams that you had, despite the fact you listen to your father and you go anyway. So when you arrive, they suddenly grab you, the brothers, and you hear them talking that they actually want to kill you. But your older brother steps in and suggests that they rather throw you into a pit. So now here you sit in the middle of nowhere, deep in a pit. There is actually no way that you actually can get out of on your own, or that actually anyone actually know that you are there, except for your brothers who wants to kill you anyway. How do you feel? Are you scared? Are you worried? What is going through your mind right now? What are the emotions that you feel? You might even sit there all alone for several hours. I'm very sure Joseph prayed all the time, asking God for his help. Then after a long wait, you suddenly hear people talking outside, and the next moment you see a rope dangling down next to you. You might say, "Thank you, Lord, you answered my prayers. I am saved." You tie the rope around your waist and you are actually pulled to the top. And when you get to the top, you see merchants with camels, and you see your brothers doing a deal, selling you as a slave to these merchants. Tell me, at this moment, what do you feel? Are you cross with God because He didn't save you? Then this long journey also begins to Egypt, with these merchants. It probably took them quite some time to reach Egypt in that hot sun of every day. Then you arrive in this big city of Egypt, and the next day it's your turn to walk onto the podium, and people make bets on you on the slave market. Do you think you would have made it up to this point feeling rejected and being sold as to the lowest form of human being, and that was a slave at the time. Then somebody from Pharaoh's palace with the name Potiphar buys you and you start to work in the palace. Joseph did all his work with vigor and to the honor of God, and soon he was promoted. Would you have done your work with vigor and honor, or would you have sit and sulk in a corner feeling depressed and missing home? How would you feel? God was with Joseph despite these difficult circumstances. Joseph's life was turned upside down. He was brought to Egypt, sold as a slave. He undoubtedly felt confused, sad and alone. But the Bible tells us that the Lord was with him there. His work was blessed and he got a good position in the house of his master, which was Potiphar, until his master's wife falsely accused him of an attempt to sleep with her. Then Joseph was thrown into jail. My question is, what would your reaction be at that moment? Would you cry out to God, stating your case, and you have been falsely accused and that he must save you? Did God save Joseph? He was not in prison for one day, not 1 week. In fact, he was in jail for 7 years. How would you have thought about the situation? Would you have actually lost your hope in God? Would you feel that God has left you? I mean, your brothers wanted to kill you. You have been sold as a slave. You worked your butt off and got promoted, and now you are back to square one? Would you have given up by now and lost your faith in God, not believe that He had a bigger plan for your life despite your circumstances? Would you believe that? Then two fellow prisoners, a cupbearer and a chief baker of the Pharaoh, had a dream that only Joseph could interpret. These were prophetic dreams, and they indeed came true. The cupbearer was restored into his position after 3 days, and the baker was hung to a pole after 3 days. So he asked the cupbearer, "When all goes well with you, please remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to the Pharaoh and get me here out of prison." But the cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph, and he was actually forgotten completely about it. Years later, Pharaoh had a very confusing dream too. Joseph was called to interpret it for them. God showed him that the dreams warned of the 7 years of famine, long famine, after the 7 years period of plenty. Pharaoh was very, very pleased with Joseph's interpretation and appointed him to be ruler over Egypt, to gather as much as grain as possible to help the Egyptians prepare for the years of famine. Joseph's position changed from a beloved son to a slave, then to a prisoner, and finally the viceroy, and God was actually with him all the time. Now I would like to move from Joseph's story to one generation earlier, and I'd actually like to tell you just a short story of Jacob's life landing up in Egypt. There's quite a bit of Jacob's life I'm actually going to cut out. For instance, where his brothers Esau sold him his birthright, how he fled to his mother's brother Laban and married Laban's two daughters, which was Leah and Rachel. But here's where I would actually like to pick up the story line. Jacob, as you know already, had 12 children, of which Joseph was one of the kids. So in the next that was a period of over 7 years, he had 11 sons and one daughter, Dinah, from Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. That was the other woman's name. Rachel only had 2 children, which was Joseph, and later on it was Benjamin. That was a very short background. Now I would like to tell you Jacob's story from this point of view, from how he would perceive things. Sometime afterwards, the sons of Jacob by Leah, Zilpah, and Zilpah was feeding the flocks in Shechem. Jacob wanted to know how things was going, so he actually asked Joseph to please go down there and actually return the report. Later that day, the report Jacob actually ended up receiving was that Joseph's brothers was brought before him, and with Joseph's coat laden with blood. Jacob immediately identified the coat as one he made for Joseph, And at that moment he cried, and he said it was my son's coat. A wild beast got hold of him, and without doubt Jacob was in tears, and he was torn to pieces. Jacob mourned for days. No one from the house of Jacob could actually comfort him during this time of sorrow. And 20 years later, throughout the Middle East, a severe famine occurred like none other that lasted actually for 7 years. Now I want to put yourself basically in Jacob's feet just for a moment. Things didn't actually go very well for Jacob, if you think about it. I mean, he trusted God all his life. He lost his favorite son, and now this drought. I mean, like our fathers, he must have prayed for rain, for his flocks were dying. The drought crippled actually all the nations in the region. The word came out that the only kingdom prospering was Egypt. In the second year of the great famine, when Jacob was about, I think, 130 years old, he told his 10 sons to go to Egypt and buy grain. Jacob's youngest son, Benjamin, born from Rachel, stayed behind by his father in order to keep him safe. Then 9 of the 10 sons returned to their father Jacob from Israel, stockpiled with grain on their donkeys. They told their father all that has actually happened to them in Egypt. They spoke of being accused as spies to the country, and that the brother Simeon had been taken prisoner. When Reuben, the eldest, mentioned that they needed to bring Benjamin to Egypt to prove their word as honest men, their father became so furious with them. I mean, think about it. He couldn't understand how they were put in a position where they actually tell the Egyptians all about their family. When the sons of Israel opened their bags, the sacks, they saw that the money that they used to pay for the grain was also still in the bags. It was still in their possession, and they all became very afraid. Jacob then became very angry with the loss of Joseph, now Simeon, and now possibly Benjamin. Now, if you're in this position, how would you think? How would you argue with God, thinking about if you have full faith in the Lord that all these disasters actually happened to you? Now, when the house of Jacob consumed all the grain that they bought from Egypt, Jacob told his sons to go back and buy some more. This time, Judah spoke to his father in order to persuade him about Benjamin accompanying them, so as to prevent the Egyptians' retribution. So Jacob let Benjamin go with him at the end. When the sons of Jacob returned to Hebron from their second trip, they came back with 20 additional donkeys carrying all kinds of goods and supplies, as well as Egyptian transport wagons. When their father came out and to meet them, his sons told him that Joseph was still alive, that he was now the governor over all of Egypt, and that he wanted the house of Israel to move to Egypt. I mean, that must have been such a big shock to Jacob to hear all these things. So that was Jacob's perspective with regards to that, what has happened to him, and he didn't know Joseph was alive. A question you might ask is, but what was the bigger picture? Why did the Israelites actually move out of the promised land, which was Israel, to Egypt and then back to Israel again 400 years later? It doesn't make sense. I mean, actually, if you measure it against today's terms, if you take 2021, less 430 years, it actually takes us back to 1591. That is 61 years before Jan van Riebeeck started a colony in the Cape. That's how long it is. To really understand this, we need to read Genesis 15, verse 13 to 16. Then the Lord said to Abram, "You can be sure that your descendants will be strangers in a foreign land, where they will be oppressed as slaves for 400 years. But I will punish a nation that enslaved them, and in the end they will come away with great wealth. As for you, you will die in peace and be buried at the ripe old age. After 4 generations, which is 400 years, your descendants will return here to this land, for the sins of the Amorites do not yet warrant their destructions." First one is the result of the Israelites leaving Egypt would be with great possessions. Of course, in order to leave Egypt, they had to be there to get the possessions. God promised that their exit would mean great abundance for Israel. This was actually fulfilled in Exodus 12, if I can recall. When the Israelites then left Egypt, following the 10th plagues, they were told to ask Egyptians for items of value for their journey. The people of Israel asked Egyptians for silver and gold jewelry and for clothing, and the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Secondly, the Lord wanted to wait before giving the promised land basically to Israel because of the inequity of the Amorites was not yet complete. The Amorites worship other gods and participate in numerous other sins, and God promised to remove them from the land where Israel would be one day. However, God had a certain time period in mind that included the 400 years for Israel in Egypt. God is surely slow to anger and abounding in his mercy, and that we can read in Psalm 103 verse 8. Once the Israelites did return to the land promised to them, the Amorites were actually destroyed as God has predicted, and that you can read in Numbers 21 verse 31 to 32, and also the book of Joshua 10 verse 10. You see, when you're following God's plan, He doesn't always reveal the journey to you. It is a step-by-step absolute road of faith, guys. Let's take, for instance, Moses. When God spoke to Moses at the burning bush, God revealed to him the end destination, but never the journey. God never told Moses, "Hi Moses, you must go to Pharaoh and tell him to release my people. But I'm going to harden his heart and he's not going to listen to you. Then I am going to send the 10 plagues. And after 10 plagues, which is the death of the firstborn, only then Pharaoh is going to release you guys. And when that's done, I'm going to arrange that the Egyptians are going to hand over all their wealth to you. And then you guys must actually move as fast as you can until you hit the Red Sea. And then I'm going to let Pharaoh chase after you with his whole army, and I will open up the Red Sea for you guys to move through. And once you are through, I will close up the waters, and Pharaoh's whole army, who was actually following you, will actually drown." Now, my question is, did God lay out the whole story at the burning bush that day to Moses for what's about to going to happen? No, God didn't tell him about how it's going to play out. So it was the same as with Joseph and the same with Jacob. They were all part of this bigger picture, which was that God revealed to Abram in Genesis 15, verse 13 to 16 for that particular time. And you might say, "Thank you, Yapi, that's really cool story, but what it's got to do with me and my purpose?" What does it have to do with the bigger picture and the purpose of my life in the times that we are actually living in today? I firmly believe we are living in the last days. Many prophecies revealed through the books of Isaiah and Revelation has come to pass already in this generation, and there is still a few outstanding that have to come into fulfillment. I know we are living in daunting times, but more than ever, never before in history, there has been actually more evidence today that the Bible is true and that this bigger picture for our times is starting to actually play out. I believe you are born in this particular country, your particular ethnic group, at this particular time for a very specific reason. I am personally constantly praying, asking God to help me to remain on track and that I don't leave this earth without reaching my purpose that He actually has created before and for my role in this bigger picture. But we all have to make a decision. You can try to follow your own plan, which is not always guaranteed, or you can follow God's plan for your life, which is really the only guarantee that you have. But like with Joseph, Jacob, and Moses, God only revealed the journey to you step by step at a time, which can be very frustrating. If you decide God's plan, be ready that He sometimes reveals things to you that doesn't make sense to you at all. This can be scary and very intimidating. I'm personally going through such a trial right now in my life, where God revealed to me something in June that would sound to a normal person like it's the most stupidest move. But this is where you just have to trust God and hang on to His promises that He will never leave you nor forsake you. God will sometimes stretch your faith, bring things over your path that will scare you, like in the case with Joseph, where he was thrown into a pit or landed up in jail. You might feel that God left you or that He's punishing you, but you just need to trust God that He will bring you out of on the other side, and that He will fulfill His purpose that He created you for on this earth. That's all for today, and I hope you got something out of the story. I greet you in the name of Jesus. Amen.